Hey, welcome to the No Guts, No Game podcast. This podcast is dedicated to help you navigate the journey of buying a Sandler franchise. So whether you've just started the investigation or you're knee-deep into the decision process, we've got you covered. Hi, I'm Dave Mattson, Executive Chairman and President of Franchising here at Sandler. In each episode, I'm interviewing a Sandler franchisee who is in your shoes. Now, maybe they were investigating 2 years ago or 2 months ago, but they're gonna share their experiences, their insights, the questions that they had when they were sitting in your chair. The goal of the podcast is to provide you valuable information and firsthand accounts from their perspective that will help you in your decision-making process for you and your family. So sit back, relax, and get ready to hear from those who've already jumped into entrepreneurship with a Sandler franchise. Hey, Mike, welcome to the No Guts, No Game podcast. Thanks for jumping on.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks for having me.
So, Mike, one of the things that, I've always asked, age comes up eventually on these, when people are looking at the business.
Sure.
And it's either, hey, I don't know, I'm late in my career, I don't want to do that. Or on the other side is, hey, I don't know if I've got enough gray hair. I've got enough hair. Yep. So, you started, when you were in your 30s. So we really love just to get your journey for a second. But before we do that,
Sure.
Tell us where you came from and how long have you been in the business?
So I've been with Sandler for 6 years. Prior, I came from academia. I was a professor, program director, did very, very similar things for a nonprofit. So
Okay.
did that for about 8 years. Taught, ran a program, had to bring in all the business on my own, ran a center around leadership, instructional design, all around communication, which is exactly what we do here.
Yep.
Was doing that for 8 years. I took a full year off. And not everyone has that luxury, but I was starting to think of what am I? What's my purpose? Where am I headed?
Yeah.
And I was looking at doing sales. I was looking at doing consulting, maybe going into HR. I wanted to leave academia. I didn't really know where and why. So did a lot of reflection after I'd gotten my MBA, and I kind of tripped and fell into Sandler. So
Okay.
my journey is going to be very different than most other people.
So out of curiosity, how did you bump into us?
So during that year off, I was looking to invest.
Okay.
Economy wasn't great, looking at alternate investments, and was working with a franchise investor, a franchise broker. And he was showing me different franchises, different opportunities to invest in. And one day I showed up and I'm like, hey, have you ever heard of this other franchise? He goes, yeah, they're great. They do great stuff. And he's like, you need to do that, but I don't get a commission on that. So let me give you 3 that I do. If you choose to go with the one that you brought me, go with it. But let me give you 3. Knowing where you've come from LMU and what you've done, you're going to love one, you're going to hate one, and one you may be interested in. The story is written. The one I loved is Sandler. The rest is history, and obviously I made the choice, and I can go into how I made the choice and all of that stuff, but I didn't even know Sandler existed prior to that conversation.
Yeah, which is not uncommon. I mean, listen, even though we train 52,000 people a year, if you're not in that space or if you've never bought sales training before, like, why would you know? It's almost like I've never seen a red car until I bought one. And then they're everywhere, right? I think like, oh my gosh, they're everywhere. So walk us through, how old were you when you jumped into the Sandler side?
So I was 36.
Okay.
Early in my relationship with my now wife, no kids. And, at that point, I now have a 3-year-old. So
Congrats.
I was 36 years young.
Okay.
I think I've kind of done everything 10 years later in life. So when I came from academia, I had no network. I had no business connections. So it was a very interesting transition in at 26, 36. But yeah, I was looking around, and a lot of people look more like myself now. My hairline's a little bit further back, a little bit grayer. But I definitely had a lot of self-doubt. Am I old enough for this?
Yeah. So let's talk about that for a second, because I think that's always a it's like a fear, right?
Sure.
Like I was 27 or 26 when I was a client, and then 28 when I came to start selling Sandler. And I just remember those days. I mean, I was freaking out, and not because I was afraid of the product. It's just because my age, I was calling on people who had decades of experience. I wasn't even alive for decades. I mean, literally. I thought, Mike, that people were going to say to me, do you know, what am I going to learn from you? I have been selling longer than you've been alive, you know? So walk us through some of the fears and scares, if you had any, and then how did you deal with all that stuff, all the head stuff that you go into it? Because you're in a consulting business, right? They expect you to have lived all this stuff. You're coming from academia. Now you're here. You don't know anybody. And so what's the mindset stuff going on?
There's a lot of self-doubt, a lot of doubter syndrome,
Yeah.
imposter syndrome. Do I even belong here? And then you always have to go back to your roots. Why are you choosing this? I'm great with people. I'm great at coaching. I'm great at teaching. I can learn the Sandler system. It did take me some time to shift, right? Like I said, I hadn't heard the system. I hadn't learned the system before. So it took me some time to get up and running. But at the end of the day, I came into a community. It was one of the main reasons why I went with Sandler, is I had people to the left or right of me who come through training with me that I could call on a regular basis. My attitude was consistently being challenged. And I had to remind myself that I did make the right decision. It's not going to be an overnight success. It takes a lot of consistent behaviors. And you can look up and see people who've been there for 3 years, for 15 years, for 30 plus years, and who have had very successful businesses. And the beauty of it is they answered the phone. And I knew that was going to happen. It wasn't a question, because when I was searching and doing my research, everyone answered the phone when I called. And people, they were very honest with me. And so I knew what I was getting myself into.
Yeah.
I don't feel like anyone sugarcoated it. In fact, if anything, people were trying to push me away. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sure that this is
Try
the
to
right.
talk you out of it, right?
Exactly. I didn't realize they were negative reversing me at the time, but they were. And so, but where I've grown the most, the way that I've been challenged the most, is one of our core tenets is around your attitude, is making sure I'm addressing those limited beliefs and what do I want to be true.
Well, I think though, but you're challenging yourself and you living through that. That has to come across when you're training others who are having the same experience, whether it's call reluctance, equal business stature, or I don't want to have a difficult conversation. There's a million things that you could,
A lot of avoidance.
yeah, but you're using that experience that you had to become a better coach.
Absolutely. And I'll share the line sitting down with that franchise broker. And I kept being like, I don't know if I could do this. I have no corporate experience.
Yeah.
And he's like, Mike, you've got almost 10 years in training, development, and sales. It's just not on your title. He's like, do you want to have a thriving business in 5 years, or do you want to be starting a business? I'm like, well, that's a stupid question. Of course, I'd rather have a thriving business. He goes, you're not going to turn a key and jump right into it.
Yeah.
Right? It's not good. It's going to be a process. So in 5 years, do you want to be starting the process, or do you want to be getting to a different level? And, on 5 years, I reflected on that comment, and I'd gotten to a different level in my career at that point, and I can share my journey of, it was a lot of lessons learned. I don't like the phrase 2 steps forward, 1 back. That was one thing I learned over the last 6 years. I use that a lot. Well, it's 2 steps forward, 1 back.
Yeah.
No, it's all forward, right? Some of those steps might be a little bit slower. Some of them might be a little bit
Well,
harder.
they're lesson steps. I call them lesson steps.
And that's one of the biggest things in Sandler. Are you learning through your efforts, or are you getting frustrated, and are you going to quit? And it's using everything as a lesson, using everything as, what am I going to learn from it? And it took me about 18 months to really take the rule from the conceptual level, from the
Own it.
level, to then own it and believe it.
Yeah.
It took me, I had that self-doubt, that doubting syndrome for many months.
Well, as an entrepreneur, I'm not even sure that ever goes away. So I could been here 38 years. I second guess myself every single day.
Each level, it's a little bit different. It comes in a different wave.
Exactly.
And the better you get at it, the faster you can bounce back.
So talk to me about, you came from academia.
Yep.
Yes, you were doing seminars. Yes, you were in the learning and development business, but you were not in the account development business, right? So, or the sales business, I'll call it the sales side. So talk to me about, you're young in your mind, you've got all this stuff going on, which is very natural. And how did you either learn it, switch it so you had confidence and conviction as you're teaching sales training when you've never sold the way that we would traditionally call selling? Like how did you do it? Like, what was the prep time? I know what mine was, but what did you do to get to that mindset that you bring value?
So it's believing what you do. And similar to yourself, it was countless hours prepping and preparing. I'm a true believer you got to walk the walk. And I had a lot of self-doubt when I started my business. Is I was teaching professionals to do things that I was just getting started with in a certain level. So first and foremost, learning the system is I had to get in there and do it. We learned so much by doing. And then I was very honest, right? If someone asks, well, how can you help me? Well, I would just reverse them.
Yeah.
I would make it more about them, because in our world, it really is about growth. It's about communication. It's about fit. Not everyone is the right fit for development. Some people are looking for a quick fix or a book or something. Not everyone's made for a several month, several year commitment. And that is something I did bring in from my previous experiences. I looked for 2-year commitments out of my organizations. So that came natural, but the actual process, the actual sales, that took me a lot of time in prepping the material and then doing it, right?
Yeah.
Working with leaders, when you're working with sales prep, you got to do it. You can't
Yeah, for me, I took about 10 hours of prep for every 1 hour of, let's say, instruction in the beginning, because the initial essentials program is either 60 to 90 minutes, depending on how you run it.
Mhm.
It would take me 10 hours to get myself ready. In the beginning, it probably took me longer.
Yep.
Because again, I didn't have 20 years of a sales experience, and you didn't have that either. So that actually helped me know the material.
Yep.
But the transition for me was actually when I heard all of the stories that my clients were bringing me, and I knew they were looking to me for the answer, but it was really the Sandler answer, right? It wasn't Dave inserting himself into the Sandler methodology to give them that. It was just me almost, spewing David Sandler live as an example.
Sure.
And when I started role playing and doing those things and helping them through their problems, I actually grabbed onto their experiences. And when that happened, it was over. I was in the left lane, not to be stopped. But that's how I actually grabbed onto their experiences, because I heard enough of them and I was helping them and I knew the answer. And then it just kind of went away after time for me personally.
And with selling, there's 2 avenues. There's doing it in the field, working with your clients, but then also the network.
Yeah.
Where I was regularly role playing and engaging with those who were mentors in our world. I would sit down with my coach on a regular basis, and when something came up where I was looking for, how would you address this, or what would be a good question to ask in this way, and then I just run it by my coach. And so it was a constant momentum building. And you said it earlier, I'll say, I still don't have all the answers, and I never will. And once you believe that, I think you're at a point where you're no longer growing, but you're always being curious and you're always open to it. It's much different to have it 6 years in the business than when you're 6 days or 6 weeks or 6 months.
Exactly.
And, sometimes you just got to see it to believe it. And, but you have to have that growth mindset. You got to have that curiosity. And nobody has the right answers. And once you're comfortable with that, but you're also confident and you're competent.
Yeah.
Right? People will see through someone who's going in there a little standoff.
Confident.
Confidence equals confidence, and confidence equals competence.
Yeah,
So they
100%.
bridge each other.
What are you finding as far as your client base look like? Are you finding that you're gravitating towards people, and because we're talking about age here for a second,
Sure.
in the same age group? Or are you finding I've got newer people that have no experience right out of college, people in their 30s and 40s, Dave, I've got even people in their 60s. I mean, what are you finding that's gravitating towards you?
So for me, obviously the age was the fear. And someone even said that, hey, you should stick with people who are younger than you. I was
Mm.
like, no. For me, it's a mindset. I gravitate those who have the mindset for growth,
Yep.
those who are willing. And once I really identified that as age is but a number, it doesn't matter. I don't believe you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I do believe that if you want to grow, if you want to do different, we can work together. So
Yeah.
once that was really the core tenet of one of my business values, I've got some people who are fresh out of college. I got people who've never sold before. I've got people who have had their business 15, 25 years. And they're like, Mike, where were you 15, 25 years ago? Most people who come to me, Dave, they say, I don't want to sound like a traditional salesperson. I don't want to be that used car salesperson from the
Yeah.
80s.
The one they see in the movies.
Yeah,
Right.
I
Yeah.
want to be someone who's consultative. I want to be someone who's listening. I don't want to be that high energy, someone who's showing up with commission breath and trying, that's not what we do. And I think by the time of our first deep dive is over, they're evaluating us. It's very rare you show up in a sales call to the product you're buying, right? We
Yeah.
sell sales training. So
Yeah.
sometimes someone will
They're
show up.
buying you. I
Show
want my people to do what you're doing, Mike.
Yeah.
That's what they're buying.
Yeah, and they're really putting you up to say, hey, do I want to talk like this? Do I want to learn like this through my prospect? It's not about, how old is he, how young is he, how's his beard look? Like it's never about those things. It always comes back to, is it the right fit? Is there need? We talk about pain a lot. What is the compelling reason to do something different? Is it important? Is it urgent? Because if it's not, we can make excuses. We can try and pretend, but
Yeah.
can't convince anybody to move forward on anything.
Yeah. They're going to have to. We don't have magic water. I used to always
Wish
say
we did. Wish it was
I wish we did. I wish we did.
$1 trillion business.
Wow. So talk to me about, now that you've been here 6 years,
Yep.
what would you have done differently for those that are thinking about getting started?
How much more time do we have?
If you have to pick the one or two big ones, what would you do?
So first and foremost, I would have been more consistent
In which way?
in my behaviors. So those who don't know Sandler, we're always taught, do your behaviors.
Yep.
And, from the first moment, I think every person I met on initial training, they just said, do your behaviors, do your behaviors. But what did that really mean? And I feel like in hindsight, I would get a new client, I'd do a little celebration, right? I mean, maybe not have been as consistent to my behaviors.
Take the afternoon off, celebrate, got one. Yeah.
Got one, lose one. Take the afternoon to mope and be like, what did I do wrong?
For 2 days.
Right? Like, oh, is my business going away?
Yeah.
So staying consistent to the behaviors. And I really started about 2.5 years ago. So it was after the pandemic. I made a commitment the year after. I made a commitment not to miss my behaviors. And for 2.5 years, I have not missed 1 week. I mean, I can go to my cookbook. I'm extremely consistent. And I've also evolved into my leading indicators. I didn't know, I was just doing things. So the message of I'm doing it, but am I doing it right? And so that's the first thing I would do different is I would go back, refine my behaviors to make sure that I'm doing it right. Okay. The second thing is I think about what is my intention in the business? I started the business trying to get this lucrative business up and running versus building a bulletproof business. So I was always fearful of losing a client, limited belief, versus the empowering belief is where am I finding my next prospect? Where am I finding my next great conversation? And it took me a long time to really realize that, especially as a new business owner. You want to make sure you're paying bills and all that. But I had these big eyes coming into it. And it took me some time. And if I can go back to my first day, I wouldn't be fearful of losing a client. I would be excited about finding my next one.
Yeah.
Right. It would help me sleep at night on those days where it's like, hey, where's the next person?
Half full.
You mentioned earlier about the red car is really, for me, it's butterflies. The law of attraction for me, whenever I see a butterfly, it reminds me is there's so many opportunities out there. and where is that next great opportunity coming from versus where am I going to lose? Who's going to leave? That's life. So once I really shifted to that empowering belief of, I know if I do my behaviors consistent, it's tried and true. Some months will be better than others. Some months will be great. You'll hit new records. You'll hit new lows. Those are all facts of sales. But if you have the right mindset that even in the downtime, that next great opportunity is coming, and you go in with the right mindset, the qualifying mindset. We've always talked about the having a lottery ticket. How would that change your mindset? I asked my mastery class this morning, throw the lottery ticket in the trash. What if you had a crystal ball?
Yeah.
You knew if you were going to get a yes or no right now. How does that change your beliefs? And I was like, whoa, that's a good question. And two things came up. Hey, if I know I'm getting a yes, I'm going to ask better questions. The stress is going to come off my shoulders. I'm going to have a great time. I'm going to have fun. If I'm going to get a no, the same thing. It's just, it's going to happen faster. So I was like, you got a crystal ball. You work your process, you work your system, you're going to find one of those two things if you ask your bold, right questions. So that's what I would do a lot different, much more consistent with intention, and then also shift my mindset to be this empowering growth piece versus fearful and scarcity.
If I flip the other side for a second, was there something that when you went into the business you didn't expect that was like an aha moment for you, like, this is awesome? I didn't realize that this was going to be one of the benefits of being either an entrepreneur or franchisee, whatever the case.
So, I mean, the aha for me
Yeah.
is I worked 70 hours at LMU, right? I wrote the curriculum. I had a great team with me. We put in countless hours, and I was putting in countless hours also. So when I found the right balance that I can grow a business and I don't have to work the weekends.
Yeah.
Right. That to me was, whoa, this is great. There's days where I don't feel like I have to be in the seat. When I was in my old job, I had to be present. I feel like I couldn't let go, couldn't relinquish my leadership.
Sure.
Where I've grown as a professional. But here with Sandler, I know for a fact that it is. When I had my daughter, I took 3 weeks off. The network was here to help me, and I could step away. I built a good business. And that's when I realized I'd found the balance. I found balance between a very successful business and why we're here.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I've loved. I've been able to bring her to swim lessons. I can pick her up and drive her to school. She comes in my office in the morning and greets me with a kiss and a hug, and everyone loves it.
It's awesome.
To me, that was the amazing piece. It's the balance of life to a good business.
Yeah, I tell you, I don't think when you go into the business, you think about that type of stuff. You have something special. You've got a 3-year-old, right? And lots of times when I talk to people, they're saying, I don't even know my first child's name. Like, I was on the road all the time. When I go home, I know the younger ones, but the older ones have to wear name tags. Like, I just don't know who they are. And they're trying to make up for that. You actually are blessed by, you are doing that immediately for the first one.
And that was the intention. I wouldn't have been able to do it in the past life. When I took that year off to reevaluate, what do I need from this? What do I need from life, my next job, my career? And that was a very important piece. And when I found Sandler and I looked at what I could do, it was a lot of work to get started. I'm not going to downplay the first year, right? The first year, you got to work hard. You got to, do the behaviors. You got to I was networking.
A lot of self-discovery.
A lot of self-discovery. I talked to more people in that year than I had done in the previous 15 years. So I was out there meeting people. I didn't come from a business network, right? I'd come from academia. So it was a lot of setting the foundations. Now I work hard, but I work with focus and being able to understand the difference in those two things. I think it was 21 or 22. That was my core initiative for the year, is how do I focus? Because I can easily find, here we are in 2024. If you got a phone, you got an office, right? So I was working all around the clock, and I didn't want to have work when I'm being a father. And yes, when they're 1 and 2, they're little potatoes, it's different, but it's setting that behavior from the beginning. Are there days that sometimes I have to work a little bit later? Sure. There's exceptions to the rules, but it's not my normal.
Yeah.
And that's what really matters for me is I'm always there when I need to be there. I can be flexible, and still have a great business, right? Sometimes people feel like if they step away or they don't focus, they lose their momentum, they lose
Yeah.
everything.
They're going to pay a price in some way, shape, or fashion. It's not true.
The goal is building a bulletproof business.
So last question for you. Excited about the future?
Absolutely. And going back to my mindset is all about building tiers. For me, once I realized it wasn't starting with the last tier, that didn't happen. For me, I'm always optimistic about what the next step is. I have a great visual. It's around the momentum, kind of like an avalanche. I've got a really cool business. I got really cool clients. I haven't met most of my future clients yet. And that's really fun to think about. Learning new businesses, new ideas, as we know, as we evolve into the future of sales. How do we evolve? And that's fun. That's fun to be around Sandler when you're around the best in the world at doing it. What are they doing? So am I excited? Absolutely. Right? Excited for where my business is going, where the profession is going, and where the industry is going. If we're not learning, we're not continuously adapting, we are falling behind. And that's the cool thing of, yes, I'm an entrepreneur. When I look to the left and the right of me, it's myself that holds me accountable. But if I connect into the network, which I do regularly, and I hear the great things, it's like, never thought of that.
Yeah, it drives you.
It forces you out of your silo, forces you into the future, and that's where we grow as entrepreneurs. So very excited about the future, very excited about different programs, the different curriculum, different things that we're offering. And, with excitement comes a little bit of anxiety, right? We got to step into the future.
Always stretching.
Outside your comfort zone. And I'm ready for that, right? It's not like you're stepping way outside. It's learn, it's growth, and it's always.
Well, you're doing what you expect your clients to do, which is to continually be focused on personal growth, professional growth, all that stuff, getting out of your comfort zone on a daily basis. You're living it. You expect it from your clients. And I do think that's what the future is going to hold. There's just so many unknowns coming down the pike, but it's exciting. I mean, it's just an exciting time to be here.
At the end of the day, we're in the communication business.
We are.
How do you work with other people? And as long as there's 8 billion people on this planet,
you need 100 of them. Yeah. Hey, listen, I appreciate you jumping on today. I know you're super busy, and I'm proud of what you've done over there, and the fact that you're now a proud father. And she's making her appearance in the training programs, which is awesome. Hopefully she doesn't ask you for a royalty down the road. But I'll see you at the upcoming conference. And again, thanks for jumping on. Appreciate you.
Always a pleasure.
See you. For more information on Sandler franchising opportunities, go to sandler.com/franchising. And don't forget to subscribe to the No Guts, No Gain podcast on your favorite app.